Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. The basics. Me, 27 female, and Caleb, 28 male, met in college, fell in love, and decided to get married once we both found stable jobs and a little life footing. Caleb is the nicest, sweetest guy on the planet, but also a bit of a people pleaser. He'll bend over backwards to not hurt anyone's feelings. That's relevant later, to explain why things went on the way they did for so long. Now a bit of info about me. I have dual citizenship. My dad is Canadian, but I went to college in the States in the same city my maternal grandmother lives, and my family is super chill, unless hockey is involved. Caleb's family? Not chill. His mom is actually fine. She's the ex-wife of his dad. But dad and stepmom not so much. Enter Layla, who at the time of this story was 21 female. She is Caleb's stepsister from his dad's remarriage. She's been in his life since she was a little kid, but the critical detail here, Layla has had a crush on Caleb for years. The crush. Layla has had a painfully obvious crush on Caleb since she was 14. At the time, everyone in his family brushed it off as cute and puppy love. They'd make comments like, "Isn't it adorable how she follows him around?" which totally ignored how uncomfortable it made Caleb. Once Caleb moved out, he went low contact with them, mostly to escape Layla. She didn't take the hint though. She kept sending weirdly suggestive selfies, faking emergencies to guilt him into visiting, and worst of all, making threats of self-harm if he didn't pay her enough attention. It was emotional blackmail, and Caleb, being the nice guy he is, felt torn between guilt and genuine unease over her behavior. Throughout our time dating, Layla was absolutely clingy. She'd get furious if he ignored her calls, bombard him with text messages, and would show up at his apartment, and later our house, seemingly determined to insert herself into every moment of our lives. Meanwhile, her mother, Caleb's stepmom, and Caleb's dad did nothing more than coddle her, dismissing her behavior as nothing more than harmless puppy love, rather than stepping in to address the escalating boundary violations. Our engagement. Fast forward to a couple of years ago. Caleb and I got engaged. He planned a sunset picnic and did the cheesy ring in a glass stunt, but with sparkling apple juice, as I don't drink. When we announced our happy news, Layla immediately lost it. She posted sad, dramatic TikToks, wrote mopey captions on her socials, and repeatedly called me a gold digger, which is wild because we're pretty much on equal footing financially. Layla's parents suddenly decided it was Caleb's and my job to manage her feelings. They insisted we postpone our wedding because it was too distressing for Layla and that her mental health was fragile. They even floated the idea that Caleb should go to couples therapy with her to work out their relationship issues. Yes, you read that right. Couples therapy. Not family therapy. Couples. Suffice to say, that was a no from us. But Caleb did offer to attend family therapy, and we were even willing to pay for it. They refused, and the guilt-tripping escalated. Relatives on that side of the family started blowing up Caleb's phone, telling him he was being cruel by not taking Layla's emotional turmoil more seriously. Meanwhile, Caleb's biological mom, who's divorced from his dad, saw the situation for what it was and encouraged him to cut everyone from that side off and go no contact, just like she did. But Caleb wasn't quite ready to go to that extreme just yet. As I said, he's a people pleaser, but we are working on it. The wedding dress. Because of all the drama, I decided to do dress shopping with only my mom, my maid of honor, and a couple of close friends who were honorary bridesmaids, as I didn't plan on having a full wedding party. I didn't even think to invite Layla or her mom, for obvious reasons. But that didn't stop Layla from showing up unannounced. A friend posted a group picture in front of the building on her Insta, which is how Layla found out where we were. I was in the middle of trying on a gorgeous A-line gown, when who do I see in the mirror's reflection behind me? Layla. Now, I don't remember everything that was said. Stress plus time equals fuzzy memory. But some moments are burned into my brain. Like the way Layla stormed right over to me, looked me up and down, and sneered, "Wow, they actually have dresses in your size?" I'm not a twig by any means. I love carbs way too much for that. But I do work out regularly, and I'm proud of my body. Yet hearing that, while wearing what had been, until that moment, my yes dress, was like an ice-cold gut punch. My mom and friends were too stunned to respond right away, as was I. But the boutique owner, an older, clearly battle-tested woman, who must have seen every type of bridal meltdown under the sun, stepped in, informing Layla in a stern and overly sweet tone that this was a private appointment and she needed to leave. Layla's response? To declare that she was the groom's sister and had a right to be there, as this was her brother's wedding. She then started pulling dresses off racks at random, tossing them aside with nasty comments about how each one didn't suit me or wouldn't fit. It took a bit more back and forth, and threats of police before Layla stormed out. And of course, Caleb's dad and stepmom tried to twist the situation into my fault. Why didn't you invite her in the first place? You know how sensitive she is. Just the same old tune of, Layla's fragile, catered to her every whim. The silver lining? I still found my dream dress that day. It wasn't the one I'd originally been going to pick when Layla showed up, but one that I personally think was far better. That night, Caleb and I had a long talk, and we agreed that Layla, and by extension that side of the family, wouldn't be involved in any wedding events outside the actual wedding, and would be on an even stricter info diet. If they kept pushing, we'd have no choice but to disinvite them entirely. We knew it would stir up a hornet's nest, but we were out of options. We did all the needed things to ensure our wedding was drama and stress-free. Passwords with our vendors, a day-of coordinator who also recommended a security company, and several other measures to be taken. No +1s unless we personally knew them, etc. Meanwhile, Caleb's dad and stepmom kept pushing. They said we should be patient because Layla's mental health was delicate, and Caleb's dad even threatened not to attend himself if we didn't let her come to my bridal shower, which, honestly, felt more like a relief than a threat. Which brings us to the next arc in the drama. The bridal shower. My bridal shower was a Bridgerton-themed high tea, because your girl was deep in her Bridgerton area. Picture a dozen of my closest friends and a few relatives, mom, grandma, and cousin, dressed to the nines, pinkies out, sipping from delicate teacups, and speaking in fake posh accents. It was honestly perfect, lots of laughter, and zero signs of drama. But the moment we left that bubble of Regency-inspired bliss, my happy mood absolutely tanked. We stepped out into the parking lot, chattering about how wonderful everything had been, only to find my car had been vandalized. Both my mirrors were broken, almost every panel keyed, 4 flat tires, and scratched into the hood was the word SL you-know-what-T. When the police arrived, they asked me if I had any idea who might have done it. I could think of only one person, Layla. The officers said they'd do what they could, but with no security cameras in the particular lot, it was basically a lost cause unless someone confessed or we had direct evidence. My insurance ended up covering part of the damage, but the timing and the emotional toll was brutal. I remember sobbing on the curb, tea dress and all, feeling so utterly done. At that moment, I even considered if staying with Caleb was even worth it. He was, and still is. And of course, when we told Caleb's dad and stepmom about the incident, they said there was no proof it was Layla, that random acts of vandalism happen all the time. Right, because random vandals regularly write that particular insult on vehicles parked at bridal showers. And yet, none of this prepared me for what Layla did next. The break-in. With the wedding just a few months away, Caleb and I took a quick weekend trip to visit my parents, because the stress was real. While we were gone, Layla apparently got a key somehow. Still don't know how. Her goal? We still aren't entirely sure, but my friends and I believe she might have been looking for my dress, which I hadn't picked up from the shop yet, as it needed alterations. What she did do, however, was go room to room wreaking havoc. She ripped our framed photos off the walls and destroyed them, and she pulled clothes out of my closet, leaving a huge mess of torn fabric and broken hangers. Poured bleach into our fish tank. We know this because she left the bottle next to the tank. And worst of all, she stole my engagement ring. Now, to answer the question that I know you will have, I had 2 rings. A simple band that I wear daily, and has inset diamonds in the band so they don't snag or get damaged. Then I have my engagement ring, which is the fancy diamond ring that I usually only wear on special occasions. I'm clumsy and worried about knocking out the stone. Both rings are part of a set with my wedding band, and can be worn as a ring stack if I want. And no, I didn't get my engagement ring back. We don't know what she did with it. But it was insured, so I did get a very nice replacement, and even a second proposal along with it. If not for the cameras our across-the-street neighbor had, we might have thought we'd been burglarized by a random stranger. But no. Who did we see entering our house like she owned the place? Layla. She even parked in our driveway. The audacity still rankles me. We called the police, and she was ultimately arrested. But, of course, her parents and their monkeys came flying in to the rescue, and she was out on bail soon after. And, of course, we were to blame. There was not one word of apology, not one drop of remorse, just gaslighting and blame shifting. According to them, we were blowing things out of proportion, and that Layla was just emotional. Every phone call or text from that side of the family left us exhausted, anxious, and even more determined to keep them at a distance. That was the final straw. I'll never forget standing in the middle of my destroyed living room, shaking with rage and heartbreak, knowing there was no going back. We were done trying to compromise or be polite about Layla's behavior. If she'd just proven anything, it's that she'd escalate as far as she could if we didn't draw a hard line. Because we'd just learned I was pregnant on our weekend getaway, and if Layla was willing to go this far over a wedding, we couldn't even imagine the lengths she might go if there was a baby in the picture. I laid it all out for him that day. I was done, and either he came with me, or we were done too. Thankfully, that served as the wake-up call Calum needed. Canceling the wedding. Our original plan was to power through and still have the wedding, albeit with strict security. But after the break-in, and now knowing I was pregnant, we decided enough was enough. We were done putting up with Layla and her crazy. And so we officially canceled the wedding. This was both out of sheer exhaustion and because we honestly feared for my safety. Layla was arrested for the break-in, but let's be real, that doesn't magically fix her obsession. Yes, we could have gotten a restraining order, but a piece of paper doesn't stop crazy either. We lost some deposits, but honestly, that was the least of our worries. Operation Ghost, or so my friends jokingly called it. Our plan was dramatic and perhaps a bit extreme, but my friends and I had a lot of fun coming up with it. Step 1. Fake a breakup. Why? To redirect Layla's focus off me. Our logic was that if Layla thought Calum and I were no longer together, maybe she would back off. The breakup story also gave me cover to move out of our house and leave the country. Destination? Canada, where my parents live, and I have a support network of family and friends to depend on. I took almost all my things, what we could salvage after Layla's break-in, that is. Quit my job, and went to live with my parents. I changed my phone number, blocked a bunch of suspicious accounts, and basically went quiet on social media. If Layla or her minions tried to stalk me, they'd hit a wall of inactivity. Meanwhile, Calum stayed in our old place for the time being, as we had loose ends to tie up. The lease on the house we were renting, his job, etc. Thankfully, our landlord was very understanding, as we'd already discussed not renewing our lease, both because we wanted a bigger place and because he wanted to sell. After moving out and shipping me a few things I'd left behind, Calum stayed with a friend, ignoring the offers to stay with his dad and stepmom, and continued working for another few weeks. Firstly, because he wanted to leave his employer on good terms and work through the requested notice period. And secondly, because we had a particular date in mind for his departure, which was about as petty as I got in this entire saga. Originally, we'd set our wedding date for midsummer, and after we canceled, Calum's dad's side of the family decided to turn that date into a support Calum party. Layla was apparently in her element, feeding them nonsense about how I was never good for him, and planning a party that would be far better than what our wedding would have been. It wouldn't surprise me if she'd even bought herself a white dress for the occasion. What they didn't know was that I'd booked Calum's flight for the morning of what would have been our wedding day. He never showed up for the party. He didn't text or call or tell them he wasn't coming. He just turned off his phone and ghosted them. Happily ever after, minus the crazy in-laws. To this day, Caleb and I remain no contact with his dad's side of the family. His mother, on the other hand, has been an amazing grandmother, loving, calm, and 100% free of drama. She lived across the country from us and never really got involved with that side of the family's antics. I'm so thankful we have at least one grandparent on Caleb's side who can shower our son with affection without bringing a tornado of nonsense through our door. We've built a safe, stable, and loving home. Caleb's thriving in a new job. I'm soaking up every moment of stay-at-home motherhood. I work, but remote, and our sweet boy is growing up surrounded by loving and mentally stable grandparents, great-grandparents, and uncles. If you made it this far, I salute you. I know it was long, but trust me, before I polished it up and trimmed out all the more minor things that happened in between, it was a lot longer. Stay safe, set boundaries with toxic in-laws, and if all else fails, a fake breakup and moving to another country might just do the trick. For those that want more, see below for additions added at request for more information. Edit 1. Family reaction. While we don't have a lot of details, we know from some friends and former co-workers that his family went around asking about him. They were informed he moved away, but he didn't tell his co-workers where, and those that did knew enough not to spill the details to his family. Layla did get into a verbal altercation with one of my friends at her work, trying to demand to know if he was with me and where I was. The police were called to remove her from the store, and while not much happened beyond that, just another day in Walmart, she was banned from the store as my friend manages it. Caleb's family knows that my family lives in Canada, though not exactly where. They know which city, but it's a big one. There were some attempts to contact my parents, but those were either ignored or met with stonewalling, and my parents ended up changing their numbers. I believe they do know we have a baby and got married, but they aren't privy to the exact location. We can't completely cut them off from learning details since we still have contact with his mom and her side, who posts online, etc., as well as friends and other family members. We do ask that posts contain no pictures of our son or us, but I know we can't control everything. As for our wedding, after all the stress and drama of the first attempt, we decided to scale down our plans. We got married in an intimate backyard wedding with only our very close family and friends. While I couldn't wear my original dress because my baby bump made it a bit of a tight fit, it's a dress that isn't overly wedding. One of the reasons I chose it, and I ended up wearing it on our first anniversary, which we recently celebrated. Layla's arrest and charges. Because it was her first official offense and her parents got her a good lawyer, she ended up taking a plea deal. She didn't serve jail time but was sentenced to probation, mandatory counseling, and ordered to pay restitution for damages, which was paid to our lawyer, into a trust and then allocated to us. From the time Layla was arrested to the court hearing, it took around 6 months. There were multiple delays, mainly because her lawyer requested extensions, according to what our lawyer told us. We weren't there for the hearing itself, choosing instead to submit victim impact statements and such through our lawyer. It was partly to avoid further emotional stress, but mostly because by that point, we'd already moved away and attending the hearing in person felt like taking a step backward. Edit 2. The minor issues. Because there was so much ongoing drama, I originally trimmed my post for brevity, but here are a few other things that occurred. Engagement party crash. Layla crashed our small, friends-only engagement party barbecue, which was to announce and celebrate our engagement with them. Layla showed up at our house and dramatically burst into tears and claimed we had purposely excluded her. Caleb's people-pleasing ways and desire not to cause a scene came to the forefront, resulting in Layla joining us. She spent the entire night whining about the food, pouting, attempting to eat things off his plate, asking him for his jacket because she was cold. It wasn't cold, and he wasn't even wearing a jacket. And various other small antics to be the center of his attention. I, meanwhile, decided to punish him by keeping well away from both of them so he could reap what he sowed in letting her stay. My go-to line was, "It's your sister, not mine. You deal with her." Job sabotage attempt. I suspect, but have no real proof, that Layla and her friends tried to sabotage my job by making false complaints to HR, alleging inappropriate behavior. Thankfully, my boss knew me well enough to see through the claims, and we have cameras which they reviewed, but it still led to an uncomfortable conversation and a lot of anxiety over my job. I also suspect it isn't the first time she has done this, as I was let go from my previous employer for complaints about my conduct with customers. Fake illness. Layla pretended to have a severe illness while her parents were away on holidays. She lives with them, desperately demanding Caleb to come over. She sent him panic texts claiming she could hardly breathe and that she thought she might die because she couldn't find her inhaler. Caleb, genuinely concerned and too nice for his own good, rushed over, with me along for the ride, and she opened the door in a skimpy nightgown, throwing herself at him while wheezing and coughing. She miraculously recovered after seeing I was there. For context, she has asthma and often uses it as an excuse for attention. One more thing on the same note. She once accused me of trying to unalive her because I'd worn some floral perfume around her. I did stop wearing it after this, but she continued to accuse me of wearing strong perfumes afterwards, even though I'd long since stopped wearing them and only used a minimally scented roll-on. Social media. Layla was rather active online, posting vague yet passive-aggressive statuses about how family betrays you and men are scum who don't know what they have. And while I have no proof, I suspect that Layla and her friends were the ones creating anonymous accounts to spam my social media with hateful comments, insults about my appearance, and accusations about being unfaithful, a gold digger, and more. I did block things down as best I could, but even my phone would get spammed with messages, and I had to change my number several times, as she was, I suspect, using my number on various websites for quotes and callbacks for salespeople, insurance, etc. Wedding registry sabotage. Again, I have no proof, but someone with access to our wedding registry started marking nearly everything as purchased. This was found out when a friend asked me what else we might want, as everything on the registry was taken. With everything going on, I don't know who else to accuse but Layla. These smaller, though still wildly frustrating issues made the larger events feel even more exhausting. Writing it all out makes it even clearer that we should have set more boundaries and enforced them way earlier. It wasn't that we weren't trying, because we were. We made numerous attempts to set firm boundaries, from directly confronting Layla about her behavior, to limiting contact, to explicitly laying out what was and wasn't acceptable. But every time we drew a line, Caleb's family pushed back, accusing us of overreacting or being cruel and pressuring Caleb to be a good brother because his sister needed him. It felt like fighting a constant uphill battle, with Layla always cast as the victim and us made out to be the unreasonable villains for standing up for ourselves. For me, while I'm not a people pleaser like Caleb, I'm more a roll my eyes and move on kind of person, so I initially let a lot of things slide, thinking it wasn't worth the energy or stress to fight every small battle. I figured Layla would eventually get bored, grow out of it, or at least redirect her obsession elsewhere. I even tried setting her up on a date at one point while Caleb and I were still just dating. She wasn't as bad before we got engaged, and back then, most of her antics were annoying but manageable. It was only after we announced our engagement that Layla's behavior escalated dramatically. When we were dating, it was things like Layla constantly texting or calling Caleb late at night, having small emergencies just to get his attention, like having an asthma attack, and now, as I'm writing this, I'm wondering if her allergic reactions were her purposely eating sesame or sesame products, or if they were legitimate mistakes. Then there was her showing up unannounced at his apartment, and then our house after we moved, whenever she knew we had plans. She once let herself in very early in our dating days, and had a complete breakdown after finding us in bed, sleeping. This should have probably been a red flag, but I was a bit lovesick for my husband back then. Who am I kidding? I still am. She'd also regularly try to guilt trip him into canceling dates by pretending to feel lonely or abandoned. Once, she even threw a tantrum because Caleb spent Valentine's Day with me instead of her, claiming he was neglecting family. God, now that I remember that one, it really makes me cringe. But while annoying and frustrating, these things felt more childish and cringy rather than outright malicious. So we, or I, mistakenly thought she'd eventually grow out of them. Clearly, we underestimated how far she'd be willing to go later. Truthfully, writing this now, if I was the person I am today and was back at the start of dating Caleb, I don't think we would have made it past the first few months. Not because of Caleb, he's always been wonderful, but because the family drama and Layla's obsession would have been an immediate deal breaker. The older and wiser version of myself recognizes that love alone isn't always enough. Healthy boundaries, mutual respect, and emotional safety matter just as much. Thankfully, Caleb eventually saw this too, but it was a long journey to get here, and a really good therapist definitely helped, as did some of the books on enmeshment she had us read. Honestly, it's eye-opening now to see just how much we tolerated or overlooked in the name of keeping the peace. Would have loved to have seen Layla's tantrum, and I'm sure it was a doozy, when she realized Caleb ditched the party to be with OP. Now her stepdad and mom can deal with her for the rest of her oh-so-delicate life. Kudos to you and your hubby for cutting ties and getting the happily ever after. Puppy love has grown, due to the fact that she kept escalating the older she got, is a sign of a serious problem. Dad and stepmother really need to pull their heads out of their butts and realize the monster they have created. When her attention shifts to someone that isn't family and becomes a bigger problem, what are they going to do? Keep bailing her out and make excuses? Well, let's be honest, probably. It is always someone else's fault. I truly hope life keeps getting better and better for you.